1 John 3, 1-7. See what love Abba God has lavished on us in letting us be called God's children. Yet that, in fact, is what we are. The reason the world does not recognize us is that it never recognized God. My dear friends, now we are God's children, but it has not been revealed what we are to become in the future. We know that when it comes to light, we will be like God. For we will see God as God really is. All who keep this hope keep themselves pure, just as Christ is pure. Anyone who sins at all breaks the law, because to sin is to break the law. Now, you know that Christ, who is sinless, appeared to abolish sin. So everyone who lives in union with Christ does not continue to sin, but whoever continues to sin has never seen or known Christ. Dear children, do not let anyone lead you astray. To live a holy life is to be holy, just as Christ is holy.
Hello, friends. Would you pray with me? May the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, Lord, for you are our strength and our salvation. Amen. See what love Abba God has lavished on us in letting us be called God's children. All who keep this hope keep themselves pure, just as Christ is pure. What comes to your mind when you hear the word purify? Being married to a retired water treatment plant operator and outdoors enthusiast, I think about the process of purifying water for drinking. Everything from the filter installed under our kitchen sink, to the Brita pitcher in the church refrigerator, to the big barrels where our community stores emergency water, to the complicated machinery my husband spent years of his work life monitoring. I also think about the portable air purifier that we bring into service in our home when wildfires bring smoke to our skies. And I think about how privileged we are to live in a country where most of our citizens have access to clean water, though not all of them, and how the wildfires of recent years have reminded us that smoke and other pollution does not recognize borders. We have been able for decades to relegate the toxins associated with industry to the corners where people with darker skin are consigned to live, and not noticed the injustice, unless some kind of accident has occurred to put the mess into our own backyards. There are those who would read our biblical text today and who might focus in a narrow way on spiritual or sexual purity. But I think that would be a diversion from matters that are more pertinent to the healing of the world, which is our mission. Living a holy life is not about retreating into some safe space away from the rest of the world and maintaining a comfortable purity. Rather, it is living in the world in such a way that affirms the belovedness of all God's children, and which addresses the need for widespread dignity, resources shared among all in a harmonious, renewed society. Access to pure, clean water and pure, breathable air so that all may know good health. Such things will be the outcome of a people of faith truly living out the way of grace. Among the various Bibles I possess is one called the Serendipity Bible. It's not a scholarly resource, but rather one that is focused on helping people build relationships and tell their faith stories in a small group setting. It's kind of an unlikely go-to place for me when working on a sermon, but I turned to it anyway this week and found this intriguing question in the margin of this passage. This week, did you feel more like a child of God or a distant relative? Stop and think about that for a moment, if you will. For me, the experience of feeling like a child of God happens when I am fully engaged in the community around me and when I am acting in ways that reflect God's love toward others. When I retreat into a place of isolation, I may feel God's presence in the solitude, but it's in the practice of loving, in connecting, in doing justice, in acts of compassion. That's where I claim my identity as a member of God's family, acting in concert with other children of God to heal the world, one piece at a time. When it comes to things like clean air and clean water, it's easy to despair, to say these matters are too big for me to handle. Not only because these elements defy the human concept of borders, but because addressing them effectively requires the attention and cooperation of governments and the establishment of policies. However, I am learning more and more that opening one's eyes to where unfairness is happening locally, raising one's voice and amplifying others' voices can make a big impact, and those impacts build on one another. Consider the example of advocate and educator Catherine Coleman Flowers, who grew up in rural Lowndes County, Alabama, a place where raw sewage regularly spilled on the ground and toilets overflowed, but the county health department repeatedly failed to respond to neighbors' concerned calls. Then, officials would turn around and levy heavy fines and threaten incarceration of residents who could not afford expensive upgrades, which contributed to people hiding the problem and things just getting worse. Rare intestinal parasites, including hookworms, plague the population of Lowndes, which is 70% Black and where more than 20% of the residents live below the poverty line. Consider, too, the sobering civil rights history of this place. Poll taxes and literacy requirements in the Reconstruction era of the late 1800s, 16 lynchings in the early 1900s, a boll weevil infestation of cotton crops in the 1920s and 30s resulted in massive job losses and depopulation as Blacks sought a better life in northern cities. In 1960, 86 white families owned 90% of the land in Lowndes and exerted iron control over local government. Catherine Coleman Flowers' parents were passionate civil rights activists there in the 1960s and taught their daughter well. Yet the dirty water situation I described is a present, not past reality. In 2021, thanks to the efforts of Flowers and the advocacy organization she leads, a federal investigation was launched into the county's failure to provide clean water and basic sanitation. The result is a new action plan to build needed wastewater infrastructure that reaches every household. And Flowers has her sights set on other rural communities as well, including Allenworth in California. The United Nations notes that worldwide, more than 2 billion people do not have access to clean drinking water. By 2030, they estimate that half of the global population is expected to be living in water-stressed conditions. Catherine Coleman Flowers' Center for Rural Enterprise and Environmental Justice website notes that 72% of the land mass of the United States is made up of rural counties, containing 13% of the nation's population. Reading from this website, many of these rural communities also face compounding air, water, and soil contamination from additional polluting sources such as agriculture, transportation, and manufacturing. This pollution continues to tear through marginalized rural communities with little to no acknowledgement, scrutiny, or mitigation, leaving rural residents suffering from significant health impacts. In many cases, these communities are under-resourced and have been disenfranchised to the point where severe contamination issues have largely gone unaddressed. These marginalized rural communities are the clients Flowers organization aims to work with and support. You have probably heard the mantra, think global, act local. Educating ourselves about these climate justice issues is a first step, not only as they relate to faraway places, but to our own backyard. That is an important reason to support local journalism, to attend local public meetings, and to just get out and get to know your neighbors. Go to stores you don't normally shop at, and make your way down streets you aren't familiar with. Make observations and strike up conversations. Become a detective for your own community and see what you might sniff out. This can be a form of spiritual discipline, and it is a way to live as an Easter person, dedicated to the hope of resurrection in your very own world. Now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord's face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord look upon you with favor and give you peace. Amen.